go ahead and start the recording. Excellent. So our staffing is a little different today. Brian's out, and so he's not helping on tech today, but April is. And that just gives me a minute to actually reintroduce April Riss to you. So April, if you wouldn't mind just coming on screen real quick. Thank you, April. And I know you're multitasking right now, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows that April has recently been appointed as the Assistant Director for Special Education Planning and Policy. And we just couldn't be happier to have her in that role. Many of you know that she's been working with us through our statewide systems of support team. Really, it started during the pandemic. We said we need someone who's working more closely with schools and districts to help advise on the special ed side. And so grateful that April stepped up and really took on two roles for the past really just about 3 years. And so April, I'm just so pleased that when the position became open that you threw your hat in and that you are now our Assistant Director. And so I know a lot of you know April, but I just want to reintroduce April in this new role that you're in. And I know you'll be hearing more from her as we go forward. April, anything you want to say as you start this new position?
I'm really excited to be working with the SEP team and the rest of the special education team at DESE, and really excited to continue the work supporting our schools and districts so that we can get the best possible education for our students with disabilities.
Thanks so much. Always appreciate that focus on the students, number one. As always, as we go along today, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A under the Q&A button here in Zoom, and we will save time at the end to answer them. And in the meantime, though, let's get started. And so on our agenda for today, we have three things. The first is that, like I said, kind of a theme this year has been that we've had guest speakers from other state agencies, particularly we've had Mass Commission for the Blind at our last meeting, for example. Really pleased to have our colleagues from the Department of Developmental Services here with us today to really talk to you about the supports the DDS provides across the lifespan and really how we can continue to improve partnership between school districts and DDS services. So really excited to turn the mic over to our DDS colleagues in just a minute. Barry Barnett, the director of our Problem Resolution System, will join us as well a little later in the meeting to provide some updates on some new developments from within PRS. And then Jamie and I will come in at the end and work on some other special education updates, and we'll always save time, like I mentioned, for Q&A. So without any further ado, I'm really glad to now introduce our colleagues from DDS, particularly Ellen Kelly-Carson, who is going to kick off our conversation today, the statewide director of family support. Ellen, welcome, and glad to turn the mic to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having us. We're excited to be here today. So I'd like to just introduce my colleagues. Chris Klaskin is here today. He's our director of intergovernmental affairs. And Beth Doyle is also with us, and she is our educational program manager. As you can see, Victor Hernandez was unable to join us today. He's our deputy assistant commissioner, but he's also our turning 22 transition guru. He's our go-to for that group of kids. So, so today I was going to we could do the next slide. I'm going to provide a high-level description of what DDS is able to provide for supports and services. We do cover people throughout the lifespan, 0 to death. So early on, we know that kids are usually in a early intervention program through their second year. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, through their second year, 0 to 3, and that the primary service source is early intervention. However, we do have family support programs and systems available for those families as well. And then for school age kids, again, the primary source is really their school. And then we do have family support center programs and services. And we do offer, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about specialized programs for kids that we have at DDS. For all age spans, there is a service coordinator. So for the children who are eligible for DDS, they are assigned a children's coordinator, a children's service coordinator, and they're really a resource for information and referral to programs that we're funding, service planning, and just general guidance. So, and then the 18 to 22 or through the 21st year, those kids are in transition from school to their adult supports or life after school. And again, the primary source is still school with whatever we have available at our family support centers and supports. We also do assign kids that are known to us, are assigned a transition service coordinator who will work with the student and the family and the team from school to do some planning. This is just a note, if you do have students that are graduating before 22, it would be in everybody's best interest if the department was made aware of this so that we could do even more planning, I guess, for those students. And then after 22, the primary source of service is really our services. And we have an array of day employment and housing and home services. In addition, many of our adults do access mass health services as well, the PCA program, the day habilitation programs, and the adult family care program. So, but we are really the primary source of services for those folks. Again, we have adult service coordinators. They're assigned to eligible persons. And again, they're working on planning and referrals and guidance and navigation for those individuals. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what happens for family support. So the family support centers is really our is our network of supports for families of folks that are under 22, and it also is available for families of persons that are over 22. We have 52 centers across the state, so they're covering every city and town. And we have 10 cultural linguistic family support centers that are focused in particular communities. And then in addition, many of our support centers have bilingual and bicultural staff to be able to provide the right support for their communities. And of that 52 centers, there's also 9 autism support centers. And all of the centers are providing information and referral, family trainings, service navigation, social rec activities, support groups, parent networking, community connections, and family inspired programs. We have a lot of centers that do Saturday morning programs, for instance, that kind of stuff. And then they all administer flexible funds, which we have available for families that are working with us. And then we have our family leadership series and programs. That's a education and leadership skill development for parents and caregivers. So we have 5 of those across the state. We have our intensive flexible family support, which is a goal-oriented and time-limited program. It's more intense, and it's really for families who are facing some instability, whether it's a healthcare concern of a caregiver, behavioral challenges of the person served. We're there for, and it's, like I said, goal oriented and time limited, but we have that program as well. Our autism waiver program is for children 0 to 9. It's an intensive in-home program. It's available for kids young kids there. And then I'm not going to talk too much about the DESE residential prevention program because Beth will be talking about that towards the end, but we're doing that. And then we have a medically complex programs. We have 5 of them in the state. And again, that's kind of a wraparound service too, because the primary service for those kids are generally nursing and PCA. So we're there to provide the wraparound. And then service coordination is available to children, transition folks, and adults. So, and then the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about just the autism, the ASD eligibility, which is less than 10 years old. So, and it was our eligibility changed after the 2014 omnibus bill passed. Prior to that, I just want to clear this up. We have children's eligibility. So kids go through eligibility from 0 to 22. It's a broader a little bit of a broader eligibility. It can be developmental delays and intellectual disabilities. And then for adults, we have, the persons have to go through eligibility again to be adult determined eligible. And we have two categories. We have our original category, which the persons had to have an intellectual disability. But after the omnibus bill passed, we broadened that so that we are folks who do not have an intellectual disability can now be eligible for some supports through DESE. And the three, we're looking at autism spectrum disorders, and then we're also looking at Prader-Willi and Smith-Magenis syndrome and in that area. Again, the disorder has to manifest itself before 22. And also the other key, minus the diagnosis, in addition to the diagnosis, is the person has to have substantial functional impairments in 3 of the 7 major life areas. And then DDS does have transition funding available for students who have accommodation plans for this group of folks. So, and again, it's less than 10 years old, the omnibus bill. So it's had a big impact on us. So the next slide, please. The number of kids turning 22 is always grew every year before, but ever since 2014, it's really grown. So it just continues to grow, and there's a legislative line item just for the turning 22 class. So it's recognized statewide, I think, for that.
We don't like it anymore.
We have transition service coordinators that are located at our area offices, and they're there to work with the student, the family, the school team, and their liaison to our DDS services. The Chapter 688 process is important during this transition. And then for adult services, what we have available are our employment supports and services. We have community-based day programs, and then we have residential support options for some folks. I guess one of the key things is just so you know how DDS is organized, we have 4 regional offices, but then we have 23 area offices, and really the families and the students and the person served are really working locally with their area office. So the next slide just is the benefits of the 688 process. It's really connecting students with the appropriate adult human service agency before they actually leave school. It leads to a formalized and shared planning process. It also helps us specifies the supports that the student and family might be requesting when leaving school. And it allows for better understanding of the student's needs. And again, funding is available when the student does turn 22. So we're on a fiscal year, but the resources are prorated as kids age out of school. So, and then just a few more key points about the 688 process. And this is really for us to all be mindful when talking to families. It's not the same as the DDS adult eligibility. I think families get a little confused. We still have to have eligibility to our department, and the 688 should happen as well. It's ideal for the form to be submitted 2 years before the student leaves school. And again, this is more for the families and the students. It's not a continuation of special education services. It's different. It's not an entitlement any longer. And then again, if we know the student is adult eligible, they'll still need the 688 because that also triggers resources for planning. So, and the transition coordinator, again, is key during this period of time because they're really going to help with a transition plan, guiding the family and the student to the appropriate adult supports that would benefit them. So, so I'm going to turn it over to Beth Doyle, who's going to just jump right into our DESE Residential Prevention Program.
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everybody. Sorry, excuse me. Glad to be back and see you all again. Last year, I came and talked to you briefly about the residential prevention program and the fact that we were having the open interest, and ta-da, we are having it again. So we are going to do it between now and the end of March this year. All right. So what the residential prevention program is it's that wraparound programming for the students. It's a person-centered plan that's actually driven by the family. And then when kids are in the program, we generally plan for about 3 to 5 hours a week with skills trainers or therapists. And the skills that the kids are working on in their homes and communities are usually things around ADLs or IADLs, behaviors, communications, self-regulation, and social skills or socialization. Those were actually our top 5 skill areas from last year. So that's really exciting. Each family who is entered into the program, right? So we get all these names together and then we randomize them. And so it gives everybody who's applying an equal opportunity to be chosen into the program because as I believe I mentioned last year, there's a lot of interest in this program and not always a lot of spaces. And we're trying to make it as equitable to everybody as we can. But so once you're in the program, right, you get a dedicated family navigator to work with your family. And so how they do that is they basically act as like a personal concierge for the family. They help the family hire the skills trainers and therapists that they're going to work with. They work on coordinating scheduling and the paperwork that needs to be done. And so we have 43 of these qualified providers. Agencies statewide, and 37 of those 43 are actually active and they have families that they're working with right now. So just a piece in the background, we call it the 55-45 rule. This is about the funding that families get, but it also gives me a chance to talk about what those wraparound services include. So the 55-45 rule means that you need to spend 55% of your annual funding on services and supports. So services and supports are things like having a skills trainer, having a senior level therapist, like a psychologist or a BCBA that's working with you in the house. It can pay for therapies that the child is getting, like music therapy, aromatherapy, arts therapy, or maybe a biofeedback therapy. It can pay for peer mentors, and it can also pay for a little bit of respite. Right, so those are the main components, and really the cornerstones of the program are that skill builder, right? And so then the other 45% can be spent on goods and reimbursements. So some of those things fall into the categories of community activities and costs. They are family trainings, safety equipment, sometimes uncovered medical expenses. So for community activities, right, this is one of my favorite stories to tell. We had a boy that was with our program, and he really loved mountain biking. And so he wanted to join the Eastern Mountain Biking Club, or whatever it was called. And so we were able to use the DESE funds to pay for that community integration activity, the membership in the Eastern Mountain Biking Club, as well as purchase him the bicycle that he needed in order to go mountain biking with his club. So that was a really fantastic thing. But it's like it's that thinking outside of the box that we love to do with this program about what are our families interested in, what do these kids need skills in, and really trying to work with them from there. A bit of a change last year to this year is we are moving to an online interest submission. So last year, everybody sent in the forms where you filled out the name and date of birth and all those things and either emailed them or mailed them to DDS. This year, we were able to put together an online form that folks can fill out. We will still accept the paper copies if that's what people can send us, but we're happy to report that there's an online option now. That's my quick overview of the open interest period is coming. If you have other questions, I'm always available to talk. Beth Doyle, and it's beth.doyle@mass.gov. Shoot me an email and I will be happy to chat with you. Thank you.
Me, myself, there we go. So thanks so much, and I appreciate the questions that I see in the Q&A. And Ellen and Beth, at the end, we'll go over some of those questions, so feel free to take a look at them right now, and we'll do. I'll just rephrase them and then ask you to respond when we get to the Q&A session. But thanks so much; that was really helpful. So just moving on, like I mentioned, the next thing on our agenda is to hear an update on PRS services and on our PRS system. And so just really glad for Barry to join us and come on the screen.
Trying
All right, I'll get you, Barry. Hold on. Okay, I sent you a request to start your video.
All right. We're good to go. Thank you very much, Russell. Good to see everyone. Just going to provide you with a brief update on PRS, unit with which you will sometimes intersect. And I'm sure when you do, you're going to want to know the bigger picture as to what's going on and why things are playing out the way they are. The first thing I want to share with you is that the context, kind of the driving force behind everything PRS is doing at this point is an increase in complaint volume. Complaint volume has gone up. It's doubled since 2019. Obviously, we want to, work hard to continue to provide you with the same responsiveness and, accuracy and timeliness of responses that we've been able to do prior to that. And so we're working to adapt to the kind of the new environment. And what that entails is that we have been busily hiring staff. And over the course of 2022, we brought on 7 new investigator specialists. So thinking back to 2019, we had 7, we're now up to 13.5. And that is all in an effort to, again, continue to provide the quality of services that we have been up to now. I'm very excited about the folks we've been able to bring on board. I think we've been very lucky. I think it's gone very well. It does take a while to get folks trained up into our particular system. So your patience is appreciated, and certainly we apologize for any delays you've been experiencing. Excuse me. One of the happy consequences of having the new staff is that this has enabled us to reestablish our 1 liaison per region system with which many of you may be familiar. So if you've been dealing with PRS in the past, you've probably generally had 1 person that is your primary contact in our unit, your kind of go-to person. You get to know each other, build that relationship over time. And over the course of the past year or 2, that system, we were not able to maintain it because of the lack of staff. And while some of you may be wondering what I'm talking about, if you had like Donna Feinberg or Matthew Nixon or Rhonda Moikovsky, or one of these people who've been here for quite a long time, you may not have noticed this, but other folks in other areas have noticed it. We value that system. We value those personal relationships, and we are working to reestablish those. And in fact, we have done that just recently with the new staff now having the numbers that we can cover all the regions that we want to. One of the other changes is that due to the high volume, before when we had regions, there were 7 of them. There are now 9 of them. In general, you will have 1 person as your primary contact in PRS as you did before. However, I do want to let you know that we've created a few floater staff positions, flex staff, that are going to move into high volume areas when a particular staff person is buried in complaints. They're going to be there to bail them out. So you won't always have the same person, but 95% of your contact will be with the same person. Let's see. So we're happy to do that. We also want to let you know that particularly as we're booting up these new staff and restructuring our unit a little bit, that all of our letters in PRS, from local report request to a letter of finding or anything else, all of those letters are always reviewed by a supervisor before they leave the building. I don't necessarily review them all. There's simply too many, but supervisors do work very closely with their staff to identify the issues in the complaint, decide what's going to be pursued, what information is going to be requested, and before any determinations are made, those are always reviewed by the supervisor. Consequently, if you have any concerns or questions about the process, please feel free to contact the supervisor with those questions. They should be probably aware of the case because they worked on it with the liaison. They might have to refresh themselves on the details, but that's a good mechanism for you to resolve any questions you have, or if your liaison staff is out and you need to request an extension or something like that. Okay, there's one specific thing that's come up recently that I want to address, a specific question, and that is the correct procedure that districts should undertake when, in the course of an investigation, you acknowledge noncompliance with an element of a complaint. The correct procedure is that, as stated in our request for local report, you can, if you acknowledge noncompliance, go directly to submitting a corrective action plan for our approval, and your subsequent implementation. Please do not implement your CAP plan until it's been approved by the department, so we're both on the same page as to what's going to be necessary in order to remediate the noncompliance. But there is no local report required in the event that you acknowledge noncompliance. And I think there's been some misunderstanding about that. I will say that if there were, two issues in a complaint and you acknowledge noncompliance on one, then a local report would still be required on the other element. But the local report is one of the pieces of evidence we use and the part of the mechanism we use to make findings of compliance or noncompliance. So if you acknowledge noncompliance, there's no reason to do that investigation. So that should not be happening. If it does, please contact the supervisor. If you are curious about who your PRS specialist is, if you're in one of these districts that hasn't had one for a while, the list is in the chat and is right here. That's pretty much it. We look forward to working with all you guys and reestablishing those relationships through regular, structured, ongoing districts. And I hope you'll enjoy meeting the staff. They're really great people.
Thanks, Barry. Really appreciate that. And I do see some questions coming in about PRS. And like I said, just feel free to put them in the Q&A section. Barry will certainly be available at the end to answer questions about PRS as well. Just want to underscore a little bit about what Barry said, that we do have more staff available. So we have taken the stage, and I'm just reiterating and underscoring what Barry said, because we want this to be of use and to be helpful in sort of expediting and having really clear steps that we're taking around resolving complaints. But where we used to have 7 regions in the state, we now have 9. So smaller regions, each liaison is assigned to maybe, fewer districts, but predominantly because, as Barry said, we just know the volume is high. And so we need the liaison to be able to focus on a more limited number of districts and hopefully provide, even better services that way. And so we're excited about that. And then, just that we are seeing sometimes where districts are still following up with their response, with their responding to the RLR, even when they're acknowledging noncompliance. And so just wanting to try to use some time there so that we can just move things ahead. So again, I'm just reiterating it because I know that you all are busy, and just sometimes hearing it more than once just helps it stick a little bit more. But Barry, thank you very much. And we will look forward to having you back at the end just to pose some questions to you. So thanks a whole lot.
You bet.
All right, now just a few special education updates to share with you today. And the first one is really about the districts that continue to work to administer the resolution funds. And so Jamie's going to give you some updates there. Thanks, Jamie.
So this will be pretty quick, but I just wanted to make sure that you have kind of the upcoming dates. The first one is the January 6th date that already went by. We're still waiting for quite a few districts that haven't completed their self-assessment. If you have not done that, if you could provide that to us as soon as possible, we need to report that to USED. If you have questions, need help with it, feel free to reach out to Janetta and Caitlin Hogan through our Equitable Services email address. April, I'll pop that in the chat in just a few minutes. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Upcoming dates in April, we'll be sending out our last set of letters for next year's allocation. So this is only for 240, 262 will be all done. This is the last year for 262. So the letters will go in April. If you had any students in your count, the count that you did this just last fall, you will receive a letter and an allocation for resolution funds for the 240 funds next year. In May, this is just a reminder. As you know, if you receive resolution funds, you're going to have to send us your written affirmations, and we ask that you show evidence that you discuss the resolution funds during your consultation meetings. So we're just giving you a reminder. Try to make sure those meetings are scheduled. It's ongoing consultation, but you're going to want to have a meeting most likely in May to really talk about how you're going to plan to use those resolution funds for next school year in order to be able to provide us with that affirmation for June 1st. So these are kind of the next dates that are coming up. Feel free to reach out to us. And I saw April already put in the chat the email address for Equitable Services. So, and I think that's it, Russell.
Great, thanks, Jamie. And so Jamie and I are also pleased to speak with you about the IEP. And so the next slide, I just really want to make sure we slow down and just really give you the information that we hope you will find helpful at this time. So we continue to march along to really develop that final form that we intend to make available this winter. And so I'm excited about the changes that we are bringing to this finalized version. And I think a really important point to make right now is that I really appreciate the way that so many of you have paid attention to not only the initial form, the draft form that we released last June, and then in the late summer, we released updated sections of the form. Those were all drafts. We wanted to get feedback on them. We wanted to make the final version stronger because of the feedback we received. Not surprisingly, we've gotten a lot of feedback. And Jamie and April and me and others, we've really been sorting through that feedback to really make that final version as strong as it possibly can be. But here's what's important. The final version will be different than what you've seen. There are some things that you gave us feedback on that we've heard you and will not look the same in the final version. And so I know I've gotten some questions from people about, hey, this part that I see in the early adopter version, the version that we put out at the end of the summer, I'm thinking about how I'm going to get my team going with this. And what I'd ask you to do is maybe just wait a little bit, see what that final form looks like, because I don't want to send you down the wrong path. Those versions really helped us to get some feedback so that we are only presenting you with what we think is going to be, the very best form possible to really help our students succeed in Massachusetts. So give us a little bit more time. We're close. We're very, very close, and we're very excited. The second question that I get a lot on, though, is about what the interface with your IT vendors will be, with your web-based IEP providers will be. And while we can't talk directly to those vendors, what we are working to make sure we release at the same time as the finalized forms are what we're calling technology specifications or tech specs, so that what we want the final form to be able to do is that it's pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing that is specifically tech dependent, that you could pick this up and use a word processing program and fill it out. It would work in a Word version, for example. And we can make it a lot better through the opportunities that come with the IT products that you have, that your IT providers are going to be able to help create some of those connections. In some cases, just a way of consolidating the IEP. So, if a student, for example, has autism, that there's, certain prompting that would need to go on. If a student doesn't have autism, that prompting goes away. We know that can be enhanced through technology, but we're making sure that the final version doesn't require technology to be able to be implemented. And so this winter, we are working doggedly to make sure we release both our final forms and then really our message to your IT providers through those tech specs of, to sort of fully operationalize this or fully maximize this new form. Here are the specifications. Here are ways that we think, you could make things show up or not show up depending on the information that's inputted about a specific student. But Jamie, before I go on, because I know that you and I are getting a lot of understandable questions about this, I just want to see if there's anything that you want to fill in about just that first column there about what's happening this winter as we finalize forms and text specifications.
I think you hit all the points, Russell, and we will certainly have more information and we'll keep everybody updated because I think that's a lot of the questions that we're getting on this first column is just timing of things.
Definitely. Jamie, I know that you and I are both really excited about the professional learning we're going to make available, that initial training and the continued training. Do you want to kick off just by describing our partner, who we're putting in place, and what they're going to be able to provide?
Sure. So Russell and I are really excited to be meeting with our vendor, which is AIR, and they have experience not just working with us in Massachusetts, but in other states, actually with rolling out the implementation of new IEPs. We really looked for a vendor that we thought could bring some high quality professional development, both asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities. So we're really excited to be able to work with them to provide you with some resources that are going to help you, not just with your rollout, but we're hoping this will be training resources that will be able to help you in years to come. So they're meant to be modules that can help with some of the topics with IEP development and the IEP team meetings that I think you'll find useful. So we're really excited, Russell, and I think that's the big piece is it's coming, and they have a lot of experience in other states doing this really successfully. So we're very we're looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that really plays into the timeline because, like Jamie said, as we develop both live trainings that will be available through our partners at AIR, as well as the asynchronous learning modules, the sort of digital learning tools that AIR will make available, it will really help you decide about implementation. And so while we will obviously have the forms available this winter, and you could implement as soon as next fall, there's absolutely no pressure to do so. And we know that, you know, Jamie and I both have extensive work histories. Our careers have mainly been on the district side. And we know that for most of you, the fall will be too soon. And there's no pressure from us whatsoever to implement the new forms by this fall. You certainly can. That's why we say you may begin adopting. But we know that likely in many places, you're going to want to spend some time next year getting used to the forms, using the live and asynchronous, the synchronous and asynchronous training opportunities we're going to make available so that you can do that full implementation in the fall of 2024. So I hope that helps to sort of take the sort of pressure off around where we're going with the new IEP. I know that believing it is seeing it. And so while I say I'm excited about the new forms, you need to be able to see them, you know, and it won't be long. We're really trucking right along so that we can get them to you in a timely way. And, you know, all of our timelines, funny things happen along the way. So give us a little grace. We're saying winter, and we mean business when we're saying it. But, you know, we have to continue to work through and make sure that we deliver for you the very best forms possible. So we're excited about this. I think it's always important to remember these forms have not gone through a full revision since 2001. It was a long time ago. And as we do it, we want to do it right. And then, you know, commit to supporting the implementation. So more to come, and pleased to see the questions that are already coming in through the Q&A. We will be glad to follow up with you further, both here and in our future meetings as well. So let's just go on. Just want to loop back around this topic of reducing and eliminating timeout rooms. Something that we've talked about a fair amount. We've talked about it last fall at the beginning of the school year, and just want to remind you that this is something that continues to be on our minds a lot through a variety of sources that we have on this, not the least of which is PRS complaints and our monitoring, also what advocacy organizations share with us. And so just encouraging you to continue to implement the guidance that we released and your own efforts to reduce or eliminate the use of timeout rooms. And we're so pleased to hear examples of districts where they've just, you know, figured out alternative ways. And we know that when you take away one option like timeout rooms, you need to replace it with something else. And so, you know, hopefully by using our guidance or other resources, you can be thinking about, you know, ultimately, how are we moving students to be able to spend as much time in the general education classroom or, you know, wherever their home classroom is, to make sure they can spend as much time there as possible and not have to be, you know, moved by staff to another location. It's that directed timeout. It's that time that an adult has to even sometimes escort a student out of the classroom to another room that we are wanting to just continue to work to reduce across the state because we know that students are so much better off when they're learning with their peers. So a reminder that we have a procurement going on right now to be able to try to find vendors to help support professional learning associated with this. And at the end of the day, the thing that I just ask is just be sure that as you're using timeout rooms to just use that standard in mind, that standard of clean, safe, sanitary, and appropriate for the purpose of calming. Keep those at the forefront of your thinking. That will help you. If you are using timeout rooms, just make sure that you're staying in the clear, that they are being used as intended. And one final note is that this is something that we are just, like I mentioned previously, we're asking more about this year when we're doing our on-site monitoring around timeout rooms. Our monitoring teams, be it for approved special education schools or for public schools, are always looking to see the timeout rooms themselves, so that they can, see what they look like, make sure that they themselves are able to sort of make an assessment of whether or not those rooms are clean, safe, sanitary, and appropriate for the purposes of calming. And we're asking for to be able to look at data this year around the use of timeout rooms, and so that we can just get a better sense of the extent to which they're being used across the state through monitoring through the schools and districts that are selected this year for monitoring. And so it won't be exhaustive. It's not every school or district that will be providing us with data, but we do want to get a better sense of the use of timeout rooms across the state right now. And I think an important reason why it's important to keep looking at these issues around student health, student safety that come through either the use of timeout rooms or the use of restraint is that, we can look across the country and just see that this is a hot topic. It's not just here in Massachusetts. And so I would just, call your attention if you're interested, take a look at this recent agreement that was reached from the U.S. Department of Civil Rights and the California Davis Joint Unified School District. There was an investigation into the use of restraint and seclusion in that district. And, it's alarming. This is certainly the stuff that I know keeps us all up at night a little bit, but this related to a student who passed away during the use of a restraint. And, while it happened far, far away from Massachusetts, I think it's always good for us just to remember that, when we put hands on students, the stakes are high, and we should be doing everything we can to avoid those situations. And, if there are situations where that's necessary, just making sure that our staff are really trained and really ready to intervene. But again, just putting as much emphasis on prevention as possible. So we just called this out to you to see, what this district was required to do. It might actually help us all see things that, what could we be doing differently as we continue to support our students. And we know that, a lot of our students have experienced trauma during this past year. Many of our students have, do show signs of mental health strain. And we want to make sure that we're providing resources and supports for them in a positive and productive way, in a proactive way. And I would just lastly just call your attention to our newcomer and refugee students, particularly because we know that in some cases, maybe students who are newcomer or refugees have sometimes gone through variety of circumstances before they show up in classrooms, and some of those circumstances may not be well articulated or explained. And so taking time with families to find out what has been the experience of children before they came to our schools. But just on this topic of thinking about the unique needs of our students who've experienced trauma, the memo that we put out about a year ago does have some really good resources for supporting students and families who've experienced trauma. And I bring this up with you because we just know that we are seeing kind of more widespread experience of districts with newcomers across the state that, in the past, maybe newcomers went to a fewer number of districts in the state. We see more districts experiencing newcomers than before. And so just as we all work to, really strengthen our systems to support our students and really bring out their strengths. And so appreciate your time and attention on that topic, and certainly glad as always to answer any questions that you might have. So I think that's close to the end. Let me just double check. Yes, that is the end. Let me stop my share and open up